Hello, everyone. Let me get us going on Facebook. Go. Okay. Let me hit go live and we're good. All right. So, welcome to Health Accelerator Holiday Cheer episode. Today, we're going to be talking about how to keep that positive mindset through the holidays. I know we talked a lot about what we think last week. We talked about scripting, but I do think there's a need to continue the conversation around staying positive through the holidays. I think a lot of things have come up this week where things may not have gone as planned for people. And maybe you had some unexpected things come up. We talked about planning to just planning to be successful. However, what we didn't really talk about was what happens when something totally unexpected happens and you're left having to just figure it out, right? Because let's be honest, things like that do happen from time to time. I'm living, breathing proof of that, right? So I want to talk about how did I get through those kind of big roadblocks where it seemed like, man, these obstacles happened. And because when do accidents or when do just kind of the unplanned happen, right? Whenever they feel like it. It's not like they happen when we're prepared for it and all of that. So I want to really just talk about, hey, what happens if maybe there's just something totally unexpected happens, right? Because it's going to we don't want it to completely throw you off, right? And it's really important that we stay as positive as possible while also working through the frustration and the very real things that they do happen. And a lot of times around the days, things seem to be magnified sometimes. And whether you're traveling and maybe your flight gets delayed, and so then your plans are canceled, plans have to completely change. And oh my gosh, or for instance, I got released and signed off on surgery, and then literally 3 weeks later, completely break my foot to where it's another 8-week recovery, which turned into 10 to 12 weeks before I was actually really able to do what I wanted to do. And so that was totally unexpected, right? And so I had planned to recover from the surgery I had. If you remember, if you've been around a long time, I had that surgery. I was out for a little while, but that was completely planned. And so it was easy to navigate. And so, believe it or not, breaking my foot was a little bit harder mentally to navigate because it was completely unexpected. It happened in the middle of a softball game, right? So think about things like that, right? When you out, hey, how am I going to handle these crazy things happen? Now, obviously, we prepare for them not to happen by scripting and by really preparing ahead of time, but life happens. And so I want to make sure, especially heading into the holiday season, because I've seen so much these past couple of weeks where it's just kind of like you have to expect the unexpected, right? And so, how do we prepare for the unexpected so that mentally it's not a big blow, right? So, scripting is one way. And we talked a lot about scripting last week. But I think it's important when we add in the what we do, right? The what we eat, what we think, and what we do. That's our 3 pillars. It's really important to add in to the what we do something that brings you joy, right? So be thinking, because when we do our anchoring exercise today, I want to really focus on adding the joy and the holiday cheer into the what we do. Okay. But before we get into all of that, if you're watching live, go ahead, drop a hashtag live in the chat. If you're watching the replay, just go ahead, drop a hashtag replay. It doesn't matter when you're getting the information, just as long as you are getting the information, okay? And so as we talk about the what we eat, what we think, what we do, okay, there's lots of things you can prepare for, right? But let's say, take for instance, my injury, right? I broke my foot and it was a pretty severe break. And that turned into being on crutches, zero weight bearing for 4 weeks, and then very minimal weight bearing until I could build up to it for the remaining 4 weeks that was in a cast. And then I expected to go into the doctor and the doctor be like, okay, you don't have to wear the air cast anymore. You're good. But he really said, no, you just have to not wear it and kind of gradually wean yourself off of it. And I can start cardio back again, right? And he was like, no, I told you 8 weeks. And so when you think about that, it's like I planned for that 6 to 8, well, it was 8 to 10 weeks after the surgery, physically, no lifting or anything. And then I really had to adjust very quickly, right? Once I broke my foot, it was like, man, I get out there, I'm playing softball again. And then obviously with a broken foot, you can't play softball, right? So it was a very quick adjustment I had to make in the mentality of, man, I was here. Everything was going right. I was released from surgery, allowed to go back to full activity, getting back to full activity, and bam, just like that. And so when you think about, okay, think back to a time in your life where maybe everything all of a sudden, oh my gosh, a wrench got thrown in. And it doesn't have to be a big injury like the one I described, but it could be something as simple as, man, I was traveling. This happened to me going to my brother's wedding, right? It was like I'm sitting in the airport waiting to get there and I have to be there the next morning, but it's like it's raining, flights are getting delayed and delayed and delayed. So I had to pivot, right? I had to shift to figure out, okay, how am I going to get there? How am I going to make this happen? All right. And so I think it's really important when we talk about the what we do in terms of, yes, the scripting and all of that to prepare for what we want to happen. And we are having these things, we're scripting these things as if everything we want has already happened, right? But the reality of it is, other things do happen and it's okay. What's important is that you practice the strategies that you're going to use when maybe things aren't going your way. So you know that you have those tools in your toolbox to handle it gracefully, right? So that it doesn't cause a lot of anxiety or a lot of just negative emotions. Yes, you're going to have some negative emotions when these crazy things happen, right? But I think it's really important that you are confident that you have these tools in your toolbox. That way, you know, hey, this isn't happening to me, it's happening for me. Maybe I don't really recognize exactly what it's doing, right? But I understand this is happening for me for some reason. And so I'm going to use the tools and I'm going to get through this because I understand that I have the tools necessary to navigate. Right. And so, what are those tools? One of those tools is scripting. One of those tools can be your gratitude practice. Right. One of those tools can be your prayer, your meditation. Meditation is incredibly powerful. And I think it's also important to have some type of physical activity that you can do no matter what, right? So whether that's yoga, maybe you're doing a modified version of yoga. For me, it was when I broke my foot, it was like, okay, cool, I can still work out upper body. And so I still made sure I was really working hard on my bench press. So I took that time in the powerlifting community to really work on my bench press, right? Which actually ended up propelling me a little bit more forward on the bench press, not to mention I was crutching around everywhere, right, for 4 weeks. But it really propelled my bench press forward to where maybe it wouldn't have recovered quite as quickly after the surgery had I not been focusing more on that, right? So when we think in terms of what are we doing to one, stay physically active, whether that's stretching, whether that's your upper body work or lower body work, maybe you break your arm or something. So what does that look like? Right. And I'm not talking about just injuries. I'm talking about these things that really are more than just minor inconveniences. They really throw a wrench in your plan and you have to totally pivot, right? So I was just on a trip this past week and it was lots of travel. It was 3 cities in 3 days, right? And so I had to really plan ahead for when my workouts were going to happen. But then it was like, oh gosh, it's busy season. It's the holidays. So we have to get to the airport a little bit sooner than maybe we normally would. And so we had to make some shifts there, right? And some pivots there as to when are we going to do our workouts, right? But they happened. Okay. And these were things that we didn't really plan for until we were leaving the first city, going to the second. And it took way longer to get through security and get our bags checked than we expected. Right. And so it was like, oh gosh, we barely made our plane, but it was okay. Right. We just had to take a little bit of a shift, a little bit of a pivot, and make sure that we were able to say, hey, okay, what are we going to do if we miss our flight? And it was interesting to look around. And this is why I think this topic really kind of resonated. And I felt like we needed to continue to talk about it because you look around at everybody traveling and people were so stressed out. They were so angry, right? They were so just couldn't handle what might happen if things didn't go exactly as they had planned. While we were over here saying, well, if we miss it, no big deal. It's fine. We'll figure it out, right? If we miss it, then maybe we just weren't supposed to be on that flight for whatever reason. Okay. Now, has it always been like that? Absolutely not. Before I really started taking control of my health, right? Of the what I think, what I eat, and what I do, that might have sent me over the edge, right? Like, oh gosh, we're not going to make it. And then I would have been just as miserable and just as stressed and just as anxious as everybody else around us, right? But because we were like, okay, everything's going to be okay, it's going to work out. And it did work out, right? But neither one of us left there stressed. We were able to enjoy ourselves, right? And that's the key. Life is meant to be enjoyed. Okay. So when we think about the what you do in terms of planning for things, expecting the unexpected, right? Because the unexpected is going to happen. All right. And I think it's really important that we're not necessarily expecting the unexpected because we're scripting things as if they've already happened and as if what we want is happening. But sometimes things happen for us that we don't necessarily plan for, right? And so, how do we navigate that? That's why I think it's really important that we always schedule in some type of activity that brings you joy every day. Okay. And so here's how I want you to apply our 7-step signature system to our holiday cheer challenge. Okay. So I want you to grab something to write with if you don't have something to write with. Okay. I'll give everybody another a minute to do that. But as we talk about it, right? Step 1 is going to be the opt in, right? I want you to comment, I'm in the chat. Okay. Before I even tell you what this holiday cheer challenge is, I want you to comment, I'm in, if you're in, right? It's not going to be hard. It's not going to take a whole lot of time. Okay. So we opt in. We get the education, right? I've got to tell you what it is. Okay. When we know better, we do better. Okay. The accountability. All right. That is showing up, doing the work. Then we've got tracking. All right. How am I going to track what it is that I'm doing for my holiday cheer challenge? Then we've got behavior modification. Step 6 is track all wins. Okay. What are the little pieces of this holiday cheer challenge that you've got to make sure you do to be successful in it? And then give back, right? What is that going to do? How is the holiday cheer challenge going to elevate you to be able to either be a better version of yourself or maybe add value to someone else, right? Okay. So what does that look like? All right, so the holiday cheer challenge, what I want it to look like is I want you to pick one thing that really brings you joy. Okay. And I know for Catherine, that would probably be doing some type of art, right? Because that helps her focus, makes her happy, brings her joy. Doing art, that is not my thing. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be everyone's thing. Pick something that truly brings you joy. All right. I love doing some type of physical challenge around the holidays. I love doing the physical challenges that turn into mental chat. That brings me joy. Right. Um, I love watching sports, right? I love reading. Okay. So something that brings you joy. And I want you to commit because the holiday season is absolute chaos, right? And I want this to be something that you can do no matter what happens, right? So I'm not going to choose something for me that's a huge physical challenge, right? So do something like that. I'm going to choose that and I have to get back to one of the goals I set during the new year. I said I was going to read one book a month for pleasure. And I got away from that, right? I did very, very well for the first, I think, 6 or 7 months of the year. I did read one book for pleasure at least every month. Uh, but then I kind of just, life got in the way, right? And so I'm going to make sure I commit to reading at least 10 minutes a day of a book that I just simply enjoy. Okay. It's not a personal development book. It's not a fitness and nutrition book. It is a book simply for entertainment. Okay. So that's what I'm choosing. Okay. So there's my accountability right there. Okay. That brings me joy. It allows me to just escape for 10, 15 minutes. And sometimes it's a little bit longer than that. Right. But that adds in a 10 to 15-minute block of fun and joy and pleasure, right? Each day. Okay, from now until next Sunday. And yes, including Christmas Day. It's 10 to 15 minutes. That's it. All right. And so that's what I want you to focus on because what that's going to do is that's going to create that behavior modification of, hey, I do things that I enjoy. So even when something unexpected happens, I still have this 10 to 15-minute window of joy that I can fall back on. And it's going to allow you to be able to go with the flow a little bit better. When you're doing things that you have fun doing and enjoy doing, what you're telling yourself is that one, you allow yourself to have fun. Two, that you deserve to have fun. You would deserve to do things you enjoy. And three, that you deserve to take care of yourself, right? You deserve to make sure you're adding joy into your life so you have that cheer, right, around the holiday season so that when things do get stressful, you can look back and you can say, okay, but I've been tracking the things that I'm doing to propel myself forward in a sense of just relaxation and pure happiness, right? I think that's something that a lot of times we forget that should be at the forefront of our goals, right? Is happiness and contentment and peace, right? Life is meant to be enjoyed. It is not meant to be super stressful. And so I remember one thing that happened, there was one of my surgeries that didn't go as planned, right? And it was a little bit of a disappointment. It was not a little bit, it was a big disappointment. This was January 2021, and I went in having one expectation of how the surgery was going to go, and it just didn't go like that. Right? There was really no rhyme or reason. It just simply didn't go as planned. And I remember the next morning, the resident doctor came into my hospital room and he's like, "Hey, I heard things didn't go as planned." It's like 5 in the morning when he comes in, and he says, "I heard things didn't go as planned. And, I can understand you're upset." And I said, "Yeah, it wasn't the outcome I wanted, but in reality, in 5 years, is this going to matter?" I said, "It's not, because everything will be resolved and it will be fine." Right. So it's not that big of a deal. I'm okay. Right. I'm okay, because in 5 years, this really isn't going to matter that much. And he looked at me and he said, "Well, that's a really interesting perspective." He's like, "I've never heard anybody say that before, but that's really a relief, because I thought you were going to be really, really upset." And I said, "Well, yeah, I mean, it was disappointing, but I'm allowed to feel that disappointment and then process it and say, hey, in 5 years, this really isn't going to matter." Right. And so we're okay now. We're moving forward. For whatever reason, it didn't work out. No big deal. Whatever it was happened for me. And here we are now. Right. And I can see it's less than 5 years after that. I can totally see why it happened the way it did. Right. And it's okay. Everything's great. I've never been healthier. Right. I am incredibly healthy. I feel great. I'm having the time of my life, right? I get to travel and do the things I want to do. I'm still powerlifting like I want to do. And so you see that in the grand scheme of things, it was okay. All right. But I could have easily let that fester and let that be the end of the world, for lack of a better term, for me, right? Easily could have done that. But because I had the tools that I built, utilizing the opt-in, the education, accountability, tracking, behavior modification, tracking all wins, and giving back, I had that system built in already. And I had the tools because I had been practicing them through my health accelerator journey, right? I'd been practicing the scripting. I'd been practicing the gratitude. I'd been practicing the meditation, right? So when something major happened, it wasn't a big blow. Yes, it was disappointing in the moment. Yes, it was frustrating, but it didn't last that long, right? The frustration lasted, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour or two, maybe overnight. But then by the next day, we were good. All right. So I'm not sitting here saying you can't get stressed out or you can't feel your way through a feeling that's happening, right? Or an event that's happening. You absolutely can. But understanding, hey, I've got the tools I need to get through it. So everything's going to be okay. Right. And there's just a sense of calm that comes with that knowingness, right? That contentment, that peace of, yeah, this isn't going how I want it to go right this second, but it's going to be okay. All right. And so that's where I think it's really important when you build things into your life, into your daily schedule that you're doing just for fun, that reminds you that, hey, one, nothing takes that much time, which is a huge thing that a lot of us need to remember sometimes, right? So nothing takes that much time, but also Nothing is that serious that we can't be okay in the end. All right. And then it also allows us to process, like, hey, yeah, this thing happened, wasn't expecting it, but hey, I've still got this to look forward to today. I've still got X, Y, and Z that I really love to do. On one of the planes I was on, there was a girl in front of me crocheting, right? And she crocheted the entire 3-hour flight. And she had a blast doing it. She had a smile on her face, and people were asking her about it, and she was asking or answering the questions. And so it's really important that we do things that add joy to our lives, not just mindlessly binge watching TV or vegging out on the couch, right? But things that truly bring us joy. All right. So, what does that look like for you? What is the one thing you are going to make sure you do each day this week that's going to add some value to your life so that when the unexpected happens, you still have that, hey, life is still okay. Life is meant to be enjoyed feeling. All right. So, again, we've got the scripting. So, that's in your toolbox. We talked about that last week. If you didn't have a chance to watch last week's class, please make sure you go back and watch the replay, because we got into scripting a little more in depth than we have in the past couple of months in that class, so that you can get just that refresher, right? We all need a refresher sometimes. All right. So, we've got the scripting, the gratitude practice. So, I want to talk about that real quick. So the way I do, and I learned this from one of my mentors. All right. So how I do my gratitude practice. First thing in the morning, I think about 3 things I'm grateful for in life in general, right? Grateful for my health, grateful for my willingness to focus on my health, right? That could be one. Grateful for my family, right? Those are all things that we can be grateful for in general, right? So, 3 things in the morning that generally I am grateful for. Okay. And then at night, it's 3 things that I'm grateful for that happened that day. Because every day may not be the absolute best day ever, even though I do have a reminder on my phone that today is the best day ever, right? Catherine has that sign on her desk. But there is something great in every day. Okay, so look for the things. That's the opting in part of the 7-step signature system. We're opting in to find the gratitude. And that's going to make things a little bit lighter, so that when the unexpected does happen, it's okay, right? And I really think, looking back at breaking my foot 3 weeks after I was released, I think that was just my body's way of saying, hey, yeah, you're released from surgery, but you probably need a little bit more time to recover. So we're just going to help you have that extra time to recover. And I'm going to tell you, my recovery has been flawless, right? Very few minor complications recovering from that surgery in July. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with I had some extra rest because of breaking my foot. So, everything happens for us, right? I recovered so well that, everything is great. I feel great and I'm doing everything I want to do, right? And so that's where having those capabilities to say, hey, okay, yep, I don't really like that this happened. Not really what I was expecting, but I'm going to work my way through it, keep a positive attitude, right? Have that positive mindset, use the tools that are in my tool belt. And I'm going to propel myself forward. And I'm going to start that by doing something every single day that I enjoy. And I'm going to tell you that one thing could be, hey, I'm going to do some, because you may not feel like doing one thing one day, but you say, hey, you know what? Right now, instead of doing this, I'd rather do this. Well, then guess what? Go do the thing you'd rather do, right? 10 to 15 minutes of something that brings you joy, right? If you're like me, I don't necessarily like doing the exact same thing all the time because then sometimes it becomes I have to, right? So maybe you just have 10 to 15 minutes of complete blank white space on your calendar and you just do whatever you feel like doing in that 10 to 15 minutes. All right. And that's okay. If that's how it works better for you, that's perfect. But maybe have a list of things you like to do and do something for 10 to 15 minutes a day. All right, that brings you joy. So that's our holiday cheer challenge. And I think it's really important because we are in the throes of the holiday season. And so things are going to happen that maybe we're not quite expecting. And so we're going to take last week's class, we're going to prepare ourselves as best we possibly can. And then we're going to stack on top of that class what we talked about tonight, right? Finding joy every single day so that when things do happen that's unexpected, we don't have a total meltdown. We're able to navigate through it a lot easier because we are doing things we enjoy every single day. Maybe that's spending time with your kids. Maybe that's it could be watching your favorite show, but it's an intentional, it's not just mindlessly binging, right? So do something that brings you joy every day. All right. So that's what I have for today. I want you to really focus on that for this week and really continue to build on your scripting practice because that's going to build a huge, solid, a rock solid foundation for moving into the new year. All right. And so next week, we're going to talk about atomic habits for success. It is right before the new year. So I want to make sure you are really set up for a phenomenal 2025. Okay. So we're going to take the skills we learned last week with scripting. We're going to add in the holiday cheer this week. Next week, we're going to plan for a rock solid 2025. So you've got a great foundation going into it and you've got great momentum, right? So we're building that momentum this week, adding joy, which is huge. A lot of times this is a very stressful time for people. So we're going to make sure this is one of the most joyous times for us, right? We're going to go into 2025 on very high vibrations and really meeting and exceeding our goals and really making a lot of progress. All right. So I will see you back here next Sunday, 7 p.m. for Atomic Habits for Success, planning for an incredible 2025. I hope everyone has a Merry Christmas for those who celebrate. For those who do not, I hope you just have a relaxing holiday week and enjoy time with family, friends, or whatever it is that you're doing. Let me know how I can support you on your journey. I'm here for you if you're needing to get back into a program for the new year. I do have a few spots still open. Would be glad to talk to you to see what program fits your needs the best. And until next Sunday, I will see you in the Facebook group and wishing everyone a super successful week. Hang in there, add lots of joy, lots of holiday cheer. See you next Sunday.